Hey everybody, John Greenwald here with theblackvault.com. So I want to highlight for you guys a one-page document that was written by the Department of State. Now I received this through the Defense Intelligence Agency, and it was in a batch of UFO files that I received literally about 2.5 decades ago. However, there's a lot of these documents that even I haven't even looked at in years upon years. And so my aim with these segments is to highlight some of the more important and more interesting ones. This, like I said, is simply a one-page record, but one that tells a very interesting story. Let me go ahead and bring up the article that I wrote. This is on theblackvault.com. You can search, use the search engine, Project Moondust, 3-ton cube-shaped satellite found in Sudan in August of 1967. You'll notice here satellite is in quotation marks. More on that in a moment. This one particular page document that came to me, let me go ahead and read it for you. That way you get a little bit of context, just in case you're watching on a mobile, it's hard to read. You can see here from the Visual Department of State, it was a telegram. It was sent from the U.S. Defense Attaché Office, that's USDAO. You see here this acronym means American Embassy in Khartoum. It was sent to the Defense Intelligence Agency in Washington, D.C. With priority. Here we go. Subject says satellite found in Sudan. Local press, 17 August 1967, reported that a satellite, cube-shaped, weighing approximately 3 tons, discovered 3 August, 50 miles from Khartoum. Satellite described as made of soft metal, presumably light aluminum, in oblong cubes measuring 2 inches by 1 inch, tightly fastened together and covered by a silky material. Nationality not identified, as no inscriptions evident on outer surface. Local authorities in, I believe that says El Fasher, have photographs and with difficulty cut samples. Recall directive, publish on reporting info of this nature, but all directives were destroyed. Request specific guidance or requirements. Now, there were no photos, no nothing attached to this, at least none that were released to me. This was the only page in the batch of material that pertained to this particular incident. Now, you read that, and when I posted this out on social media, I said, don't be thrown off by the descriptor. Keep in mind, a lot of UFO-related or UAP-related documents in the past used descriptors to potentially lead readers to believe a certain thing. In this particular one, it was called a satellite. And I'll get to why I put that in quotation marks in a minute, and I'm not fully sold that this was a satellite. But you'll also notice in the 1970s, the Department of Defense would use unidentified helicopters for referencing unidentified flying objects, or UFOs. Now, were they helicopters? Well, in a lot of cases, there were no signs or pieces of evidence to say, well, this was a helicopter. We just don't know if it was a Bell or, whatever other type of helicopter that was out there. Rather, they just kept calling them unidentified helicopters, potentially to give a descriptor to essentially throw people off. We don't really know. I've heard varying reasons why those descriptors were used, none of which I can 100% nail down of why, other than we just don't know. And so we as researchers, we look at these documents, we have to be reminded, don't be thrown off that they're using the word satellite, because it may have just been the only word that they could think of. I started researching and digging into the satellites at the time, trying to figure out what number one was cube-shaped and what number two would fit the time frame and the weight. And what was really interesting, because I figured we'd get really close matches, is that there really weren't any close matches at all. And that's what was starting to intrigue me a little bit about this record, because here we are in 2021, and this was in 1967, as I had noted. So you're talking about 50 plus years for information to now come out about what, let's say, the Soviet Union at the time was launching into space. And yet nothing actually matches even close. to the description here. They do say that it weighed about 6,000 pounds or 3 tons. That's from the document. But nothing, again, matched it. Now, the closest thing that I was able to find was something called a proton satellite. Now, these proton satellites were much, much heavier at 37,000 pounds. It was around the same time frame, so you had to fit there. But you can see the weight nor the visual actually came close to matching. The Soyuz fit also the time frame, but that was also 15,000 plus pounds. So what I was trying to do here was try to find something that matched the time frame, the weight, and the visual characteristics, and nothing did. You could only find maybe something close to weight, and in these cases weren't even that close at all, but the time frame. So you just had nothing that would match up. Cube satellites are something that's bantered about nowadays, and that may be an easy thing to start thinking of about. They're called CubeSats, cube-like satellites that are launched out there. But they're very, very small, and they weren't actually proposed until 1999. So the idea that that would play a role in any of this is also discounted because the evidence isn't there. They weren't invented until decades later. So what was it? Was this all based on false intelligence? Well, that's always a possibility, and we always have to consider that. Or was this something else? The last thing I'll note for you is this is from what's called Project Moondust. Now, Project Moondust, the official explanation, was a project where the U.S. government would go out and essentially either investigate or collect debris that had fallen from space. Keep in mind this time frame, we're talking about the space race. We're talking about the Soviet Union and America were head-to-head at trying to get to not only space but the moon, and they were really putting their all into this particular space race. Well, the one side didn't really have 100% of the details about what the other side was doing, and so any failure, and the Soviet Union had a ton of them, not that America didn't, but the Soviet Union had a ton of them. What goes up must come down. And in those failures, that technology would come down and essentially either crash or burn up in its majority, and we would go out and collect it under this Project Moondust and try to essentially figure out what they were doing. What are they launching? Because it wasn't all for the greater good of humanity and scientific exploration. Even the United States was trying to figure out how they could militarize the space race and what was going on. And there's a lot of documents to that. And that just reminded me I should do a video about all of that stuff too. So there was a lot of other stuff that was going on behind the scenes. And Moondust aimed to figure out what the Soviet Union was doing, what they had, how they made it. And with this particular object, was it Soviet? Was it some other country that was experimenting? Who knows? But the history books, as I record this, really doesn't have anything that I was able to find, and that is not the final word. If anybody knows a 6,000 or so pound cube-shaped satellite object that was launched around 1967, you let me know. I'll highlight your name on this channel, and we'll do a video updating this. But for now, nothing matches. So what's the explanation? You guys decide. As always, post those ideas down in the comments. Make sure you give these videos a thumbs up. It always helps. And of course, more than all else, past subscribing to this channel, spread the word. That does it the most for me and helps out. This is John Greenwald Jr. signing off, and we'll see you next time.